Hey guys, Omar here, and I thought we'd talk a little bit about finding your photographic style. In the beginning, when you first start photography, you really don't know how or what you want your photos to do. You start getting good at taking them, but then you bring them into your editing program, and sometimes it's a little hard to figure out what you want to do with them. So in this little video series that I'm creating, I'm hoping to give you a foundation for finding your photographic style and maybe defining your work a little bit more as opposed to having a bunch of different edits you like. Now, what's the importance of having a style or a look? Well, I know when I first started, I had a bunch of different looks. I would even deliver to clients. If there was a bunch of looks, I would sometimes deliver, a color version of one, a black and white of another, a sepia one. No, not sepia. I would just deliver all these different styles. And what started happening were clients were sort of asking for different poses in different looks. Can I get this one in the faded? Can I get that one in the color? Can you make this black and white one color? Instead, garbage truck. All right, so obviously you can purchase presets for a look that you like, but usually presets are kind of a finished product that you tone down, or you kind of work backwards. They have a look and you make them kind of your own. What I'm going to show you today is picture from the bottom foundation and working your way up to what you like. Now, obviously there's limitless looks, but I'm going to show you 4 sort of foundations to get you started. Now, by the way, most of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is for portraits because that's what I specialize in, but you can translate all this stuff to street photography or to landscapes or still life. Let's start with curves. Okay, so I'm using Lightroom, but you can use any editing program you have. Now, the first thing to know is editing programs like Lightroom and other programs will read images differently. Even if you come to Lightroom here, you actually can process the raw to start at a certain place. I recommend you start your photographs always with the same, when you import them with the same Adobe RAW or a camera matching. So for example, Adobe Color is a good starting point because it's pretty flat, and so is Camera Standard. Camera Standard, those kind of don't have any look. So I'm going to use Canon, this is Canon Camera Standard, but you can use, if you're using a Fuji, you could use like Provia, which is pretty flat, or negative, Pro Neg High, Pro Neg Low, those are pretty flat. So that's the first thing, is bring your RAW in without a look. Like for example, if I do landscape, look how saturated it is. So we don't want to do that. So we want to come in with a flat profile. So I'm going to start with Camera Standard. You can start with whatever you like. So we're going to start with curves. Curves is your foundation. Find your curves in your editing program. And I'm going to show you the first one that I learned. The first one that I learned is an S-curve. And there's 2 ways you can manipulate your curve. You can click on your curve. You can pull your curve like this. And so that's an S-curve. An S-curve is where you take the lights and the darks go up, the darks go down, and you get this first look. This first foundation is an S-curve. S-curve is very punchy. It actually brings out the colors more in your photograph. So if you like this style, you can start with an S-curve. The next is to have something that's a little bit less crunchy, a little less contrasty, and that's to have your midtones in the middle here, the midtones up, okay? And you can do that by pulling the curve in Lightroom, or you can take the darks and bring them up. And this gives you a softer starting palette, okay? So midtones up is our number 2. Third, very popular now is the faded look. Having a faded kind of film look or an antique, there it is again. So to do that in Lightroom, and in the next video, I'll show you how to do all this on Instagram, by the way. All right, you'll see linear over here. What you want to do is click on this, and it basically gives you the ability to lift up this corner here. Now, the more you lift up, the more faded it'll look. So we're going to exaggerate it for this example. But now we've redefined the curve. So the darks are actually brought up at the bottom, okay? And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing, the S-curve and the midtones up, but with this faded look. And that will give us 4 looks. Normal S-curve, normal midtones up, faded S-curve, and faded midtones up. And this is our foundation. Okay, so now that we have our shadows up, let's bring this back down. You see that it's there. And what you could do is do the S-curve. So the S-curve is highlights up and shadows down. And then you have this look here, okay? This is a very popular look that's out now. It started with the whole Instagram filters, and it's a good look. But remember, this is about you. This is not about my style. This is about you finding your style. So if you don't like the faded look, or maybe it's too much, you can bring down this little corner here. You can actually redefine the curve to be like a little faded, very faded. And so decide how much fade you want and then pick your curve, okay? But your foundation of the curve will make your work consistent, as opposed to having one picture that's very saturated and crunchy and one that's faded. Got it? Okay, so that's S-curve faded. Let's bring that fade back up, yo. We gotta exaggerate here. And we'll click this again, and now let's put the midtones up. And so now we have a very flat look. So faded with the midtones up is very light, very dreamy, very airy, but you may like that style. So you can start your foundation with this dreamy kind of look and then add other stuff, which we'll talk about in other videos. Okay, once you find the curve that you like as your foundation, well then save that curve or save a few curves. And what you wanna do is don't just start editing and make that your look. You want to give it some time. So you actually want to step away from the computer and come back. There's a bunch of times where I've come back and it's like, whoa, that doesn't work. So you don't want to just jump into it and make your look, but you want to start saving presets. And you're going to see that basically your tastes will change and you'll kind of like morph your look. So like some of the things you do are very heavy-handed at first because you're excited. You might want to tone down the stuff. So if you're like going for the faded look, like make it less faded to start. Or if you like a punchy, saturated look, and we'll talk about color in another video, tone it down a little bit. So find levels of your look as you're forming your own style. Let's show you that really quick with another portrait. Here we go, flat out of camera. I'm going to double check that it's in camera standard. And you can make, here's some presets. So I made 4 different presets for the different. And if you don't know how to make a preset, just hit this little plus sign at the top. But let's start with color faded, midtones up. So that's a beautiful start to the photograph if that's what's your look. You start with your curve. Now color faded S-curve. So now we have a little crunchier, darker blacks, but we still have that film faded look, foundation. Midtones up is your more normal photograph. So not flat, but definitely not pushing the editing too much, okay? And I love this style. It's just, the picture speaks for itself more than the editing. And last, the S-curve. The S-curve, I started with the S-curve, and a bunch of my early children's photography was very punchy, very colorful. It's a fun style. I just got kind of tired of it and it was just a little too much editing. I was a little too heavy-handed with it in the beginning. But you can tone down your S-curve by bringing the S-curve just to be a little closer, a little more subtle. And then if you bring your shadows up, it gives you a punchy look. Bringing the shadows up a bit will give you the S-curve, more toned down S-curve, okay? All right, so there you have part one of finding your style. You're finding your style, your foundation. The first one is your curve. Make your curve first for what style you like, and in the next few videos, we'll build up on your style. All right, guys, see you next time.